Howdy, folks. This is just a reminder that if you like this content, you can help me out by liking, commenting, and especially by subscribing. And be sure to hit the bell notification so you always get notified whenever I have a new video. Hope you enjoy this.
Yeah, let's start with Colin in Newfoundland, Canada, listening on Catholic.com. Colin, welcome. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, guys. Jimmy, I've heard you before say that you don't think computers will ever be alive or conscious because computers don't have any characteristics we associate with life, like biology, DNA, etc. But I have also talked to atheists who use similar lines of argumentation to say God or angels couldn't be alive or conscious since they are also not biological. Now, I could say that life and consciousness aren't constrained to biology, but then that would seem to leave open a possibility for some constructed non-biological system, perhaps like a computer having the properties of life or consciousness. So how would you clarify those categories?
Well, so I think that we have to, in approaching this question, I would say that the way I approach it is to take a cautious approach that begins by looking at what I'm confident of. And what I'm confident of is that humans have consciousness. I'm also confident that animals have consciousness because they display it. Even though Rene Descartes thought that dogs are basically robots that have no consciousness and just are behaved to program certain ways, I don't see it that way. The evidence seems to me that animals do have consciousness. And dogs very much act like they have feelings, and they have love for people. They get hungry. They have all kinds of behaviors that, even though they can't talk, they just seem to display consciousness. And there are other animals that can talk to a limited degree, like gray parrots, and they seem to display consciousness as well. So I would say that we've got good evidence for animals and plants, animals and humans to have consciousness. We don't have that, though, for machines. And like if you have an added machine, it may be able to, perform certain operations, but if you then interpret the result of those operations, it can be interpreted as having meaning. But that's the same as an abacus. An abacus, when you're sliding beads around on it, the abacus really doesn't understand what's going on. You're using those beads as symbols of meaning. Like 2 beads here stands for 2 apples or whatever it may be. And then if I slide another 2 beads over to them, then I've got 4 apples. But the meaning is in my consciousness. The abacus does not have its own consciousness. And similarly, an added machine is just a fancy abacus, and computers are just fancy adding machines. And so I don't see any evidence for machines having consciousness. They get better at replicating something that is interpreted by humans in terms of consciousness, but it appears to me that, unlike animals, with machines, it's just an illusion. And so I would say, at least based on the evidence we have, that it looks like there is a fundamental divide between biology, which is capable of supporting consciousness, and machines, which may be able to manipulate information but don't appear to understand that information, or have any awareness of what the information means. They just manipulate the data according to a certain set of rules. When it comes to God and angels, though, I've made a positive statement that biology does appear to support consciousness, and I've made a positive statement that machines don't appear to support consciousness. But God and angels are 2 new categories. God is his own category by himself. Angels are their own category by themselves. And so we have to look at, well, what evidence do we have? Does God appear to be conscious? Yes. Do angels appear to be conscious? Yes. But they're non-biological. So I would say that although biology is associated with consciousness, it is not a requirement for consciousness. And we have to look at the different categories we have and say, do we see good evidence for consciousness here? In the case of God, angels, and humans and other biological creatures like animals, I would say yes. But in the case of, I'm not even sure about all biological creatures, but in the case of higher animals, yes. But then in the case of machines, I just don't see any evidence of consciousness or awareness on their part.
Colin?
Yeah, that all makes sense to me, though I could imagine the comeback from an atheist of something like, how would you distinguish between the consciousness that you observe in God and the false illusion of consciousness that you observe in something like an AI?
Well, I mean, that's something that I could probably write a philosophical paper about. I don't know that I can give you a short answer in a radio call-in, for something like that. But I would tend to turn to the arguments for the existence of God that support the idea of God as an infinite mind. And an infinite mind is definitely going to be a more plausible candidate for consciousness than something that's basically a glorified abacus. I can be more confident of God having consciousness than I can have a real consciousness, as opposed to the illusion of consciousness, if you understand what God is, as opposed to understanding what a computer is.
Colin, I'm going to say thanks and take the first break. Appreciate the call. It's always nice to talk with you. Lots more calls coming up for Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
And before we go, just one more reminder that if you like what you've watched, you can help me out by liking, commenting, and especially by subscribing. I'm trying to grow my channel, and I'd really appreciate your help. Thank you, and God bless you.